What's up, Model FAs? David DeCelle here, CEO of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And I am joined by a breath of fresh air and someone that I've come to really like, albeit after just one phone call that we've had. But I think you're in for a treat today with Coach Nick Davies. And Nick is a part of a company, seven-figure advisor. And what we're going to be talking about today is the power of and his suggested, structure around having masterminds with your peers to help each other grow, work through challenges that you may experience, and also how to have a relationship-centric approach to everything that you do in your business and with your clients. Nick does have a goal of serving 100,000 advisors in a very short period of time for that volume in 3 years. So lofty goal, but if someone can achieve it, I believe Nick can. So with that said, Nick, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. It kind of gives me chills every time I hear someone else say that. 100,000 advisors. That's a lot. That's a lot of advisors. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of advisors, but I'm a big believer that the the distance between where you are and what your goal is the amount of energy that you'll expend to hit that goal.
Mhm.
So you may hit 100,000 advisors, you may not, but I'm willing to bet that in the process over the next 3 years, the impact that you'll have will be across thousands, if not tens of thousands of advisors, which would be more than if your goal was to help 100 advisors. So whether the goal is hit or not, it's going to be a heck of a lot more than what it would be if your goal was much smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And really the context of the goal is about being able to think in ways that pushes towards serving 100,000 advisors. So it's a forcing function. If I'm thinking about what should I do next in my business, what am I building? I want to build it in a way that allows it to have reach that can impact more rather than less, right? So it just allows for that growth. It creates the space to walk into it. So exactly, like the exact number is not the point. It's just it's a lot of advisors, right? And if I can think
Yes,
of it in that way around, like that can have a lot of impact, and to your point, way more than if my focus was 100. And not that that wouldn't have a big ripple effect, but like it's a different way of thinking about it. And I find there's a lot of leverage doing that.
for sure. And it forces you to be creative and figure out, speaking of leverage, how you
Mm,
can serve that many people in a leverage fashion because you most certainly cannot, serve 100,000 people at once in exchange of your time for their dollars. So
that's
it
right.
forces you to be creative too. So with that said, I guess before we dive into some of these topics, Nick, give us a sense of your background. So you figure, after school, what were, some of the stops of the train, so to speak, to get you to where you are today?
I just started running a new group of helping advisors this morning, so I've told this story once already today, or a version of it at least. But obviously, I grew up in England and back in the late
What do you mean,
90s.
obviously? You don't sound like you grew up in England.
Giving everyone that's listening and watching some credit, but no, I frequently get like other places, obviously Australia often, but that's okay. But the way it was for me was that it was just straight out of high school, walk to the city of London and get a job. So I worked in banking like right before in the tech boom, tech bubble, and started there in 2000. I worked in banking for 20 years all over the world, and that like the big story for me, really in that first dynamic of it, was why do people do things differently? I remember the first team I ran when I was 23 years old. I had 4 or 5 people on my team. They were all like much older than me. And the work itself was the work, right? It was pressing buttons, getting things done, like dealing with traders and like in a high pressure environment. But you could see that people that relatively the same sort of experience, same sort of age, they would go through the day. One would go through the day and like go through and have a flow and then get the result. And then another one would be like crashing the phone down, like run outside for a cigarette, come back in, like, let's get the result at the end of the day. But the experience was really different. Let me start to think like, what is the difference? What's the difference in the motivation between people and why they do things? And really, that's the genesis. And I obviously didn't know at the time. If I look back to the journey I've got to now, it's like people fascinate me, and everything in life, all the satisfaction we get, a lot of the heartache as well, comes from people, comes from relationships, and really using that as a essential part of how we do things is really important. And I spent a lot of time working in London, and I decided to quit and go traveling, like in the crisis in 2008, 2009. Traveled all around the world, came back to London, met my old boss, and said, "I need a job, please." And I found myself. I said, "I need a job anywhere but London," and I found myself living and working in the Philippines. Great experience working in Asia for a couple of years. I campaigned for a move to the States, and I moved to Florida. Lived there for a long time. That's where I met my wife. Moved to New York, worked on Wall Street. I had the best job I've ever had with the most autonomy I've ever had. Like working in Wall Street, I always wanted to work from, and making the most money I've ever had. But I was miserable. It's like this. I don't want to do this anymore. I really want to align myself with what's really important to me, which I was still figuring out, of course. But I looked at what I liked about what I was doing, what I was good at, and it's that connection with people, building rapport, helping people getting the results that they want to get to. That's when I decided to move to coaching, and I was a Tony Robbins coach for a long time. That's a whole different story, like super, super amazing experience. When I moved to North Carolina, I decided to refocus and get really clear and leverage my finance background and start to work with financial advisors. And it's been really refreshing to be able to do that. And like different business owners along the way. And what I'll say about that as well, Dave, is like how important it is to realize that where focus is for advisors, but business is business, people are people, and there's so many overlaps between all the different industries. And so I've have clients over the years, and I've still got a bunch of these, like, have car washes or have recycling companies, like, or just many different things. And there's just so many variables on that. And so when we moved to North Carolina and started focus working with advisors, and that's what I've been building from them. And yeah, so now that's what I get to do every day now, which is super exciting.
Love it. Well, walk me through this idea, and I shouldn't say this idea because it's a tried and true idea, probably well before this, but I remember first coming across the strategy of forming masterminds in the book Think and Grow Rich. And that
Yeah.
is such a staple book for anyone in any industry, to help with becoming more successful. And one of the things they really harp on in that book, I think it's towards the end, is the idea of forming masterminds. So I'm curious to know on your end. I want to start more general and then get tactical. Start by talking to me about the importance of masterminds for advisors.
Thanks for that reminder. Actually, I forgot it was in that book. Yeah, that's it. Just like as soon as you said it, it kind of made me go back to first reading that book, which was a long time ago. That's really cool. So important to surround yourself with people that have higher standards, that want to that want to push themselves, that want to be in a place where they're getting challenged. It's like, so if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with someone else. That's the baseline concept, right? It's like me and you doing this podcast today. For people that are watching, listening to it, like can take some of it, right? You want to be around people that are pushing the envelope, and it may not be exactly what you want to do, but it's taking the standard, right? People are either examples or warnings. And it's my commitment, as much as I possibly can be, is to be an example where people decide to look at things that we're doing and use that to leverage for themselves to go to the next level, right? So that's in the essence, the power of masterminds is that you can look around a group of people that are, and the most powerful version of it is when the people that are adjacent to you. It's like running the 100 meters in the Olympics. And that's always the event that I want to watch in the Olympics, right? That's for me, the flagship event. And it's like the guy that comes first versus the guy that comes eighth. All the marbles goes to the guy that wins the gold, right? I mean, the guy second he gets the silver, third gets a bronze. Number four, the fourth fastest man in the world, doesn't get anything, right? Let alone the guy at number eight. It's crazy. And obviously, in the actual time difference between those is very, very small, but it does make a difference, right? But who would you most learn from, right? The guy that is came in eighth can learn a bunch from the guy that came in first, and I would suggest the guy that came in first can learn a bunch from the guy that came in eighth, right? Because it's the people that are just adjacent to you, right? Just behind you, just in front of you, or just by the side of you, where you can learn the most from because you're zeroed into the same piece, but you're at a slightly different position as well. Not to say that from industry to industry, just like we were talking about, there's not stuff that you can learn, but when you come back down to, like you said, the tactical and the specifics of it, you want the people that are there or thereabouts in terms of the way that what they're doing.
Now, what are your thoughts on a peer-led mastermind compared to a facilitator-led mastermind? You may be a little biased because I picture you helping lead and
Yeah.
facilitate masterminds, but um, I guess what have you seen work and why does it work?
And that, that's my focus to help 100,000 because I know I can't do that all myself. That's why when I give away a lot of this stuff. But it certainly can work, right? It certainly can work. People often ask me, and as I'm sure they do ask you, right, what's the best tool? What's the best system to use, right? And the baseline answer to that is, well, the one that you'll actually use, right? And to get the result. So if you have a peer-led mastermind, that's awesome. That's awesome. The challenge with that from the start point is that if you're the leader of that mastermind, you've got to lead it as well as facilitate it, as well as participate in it, as well as doing admin, logistics, and all those type of things. And so you can make it work, right? You have the primary leader and you make sure that the leader clear on the roles and who does what, and perhaps you perform the leadership role and then you move out with someone else in the group for after a couple of months or a couple of rotations and stuff as well. So I've definitely seen it work for sure. It can do. But it requires much more on the front end of the leader to make sure it keeps going as well, which takes away from the impact they're going to get. Like it's never going to be quite as good as it could be if they're only there to show up, right? It's like me and my wife are watching a show on Netflix right now. We like at the evening we watch after the kids are going to bed. We've got like a half an hour downtime, watch a bit of Netflix, and it's a medical show, right? And I'm just thinking about one of the scenes when in the operating room, like the surgeon is doing surgeon things, right? And all of the support people around them, they're doing their roles, right? And like it's not a case of one role is more important than the other role. It's like they're all doing different roles, and they're doing different roles because it's the most efficient way of getting the result they want to get to. So the surgeons there are asking for a scalpel. They're not picking it off the table and doing it themselves. They're asking for it and they get put it into their hands, right? Because it's the nurse's job to get the exact tool that they ask and make sure it doesn't get wrong to put it in the surgeon's hands so he can be 100% focused on doing what he's doing. It's the same situation. If you're going to get the best results from being in a mastermind, you want to make sure that you've got someone that's separate getting to the outcome. Now, that said, absolutely, if you're in a peer-led mastermind and it works, then great. Like, and then it's a case of just upgrading it. Is it really what you want it to be? Are you getting the results that you want? Is everyone really committed? Is the standard high and you're having a great time and are really impacting your business through doing it?
So I put together a mastermind group that was just sort of a pro bono doing these folks a solid where
Mhm.
there's a lot of advisor mastermind groups, there's a lot of CEO mastermind groups, but
Right.
where I noticed the gap is in some of these larger firms, they have a variety of titles, but I can summarize them in one title, which is a chief growth officer, where essentially they're in charge of the advisors and helping them grow. And I noticed that that was a area in the marketplace that was underserved. So just to test it out, I had a bunch of those firms as clients that had those roles, and I said, "Hey, I want to help put together a mastermind. I'll lead the first one, and then you guys just take it from there because I wanted them to uh, join because they wanted to. I didn't want them to feel as
Mhm.
if I was trying to make money off them because it's not part of our core business model. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I just wanted to do them a solid. And the feedback that I've gotten from them, because they've been doing it for 3, maybe 4 months since the initial
Mhm.
phone call, what I suggested that they did, since it was peer led, and this will all lead to a question. Since it was peer led, is hey, Pat is in charge of the first meeting. Megan's in charge of the second meeting. Katie's in charge of the next meeting. Keith
Mhm.
is in charge of the next meeting. So they're all taking some of the leadership, administrative, and facilitation responsibilities so it doesn't just fall on one person.
Mhm.
Because I didn't think that was fair to fall on one person when they
Right.
weren't getting paid. If I was getting paid for it, I would be that guy, but that wasn't the intention of setting up this group. And the feedback that I received is that it's been valuable.
That's funny.
However,
Yeah.
um, they run out of time. They go down rabbit holes
Yeah.
because no
Yeah.
one is helping facilitate and time things out or make people stick to an agenda. So my question is, when someone's thinking about a mastermind, what do you do as it relates to first cadence? Is it once a month, once a quarter, twice a month? What does that look like? Is it all virtual? Do you ever recommend that they do in person? Like, what does that the cadence look like? And then also, what should the structure be,
Mm.
both in terms of time spent? Is it an hour, 2 hours, half a day, full day, 30 minutes? What's the agenda look like? How do you keep people on track with the agenda? So kind of help. I said I'd start more general and then get tactical. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
get tactical.
Yeah. My goal around this is to create framework and then make it available depending on what the group might need, right? So I think about if I zoom all the way out and think, okay, what's the three biggest principles? I just call them the three keys to mastermind success. It's commitment, collaboration, and consistency. And like that just by itself is, if you said, I want like a little bit of guidance, right, I got it, right? I want to run it, I want to do the thing. Like those are the top three. And then you can go into detail to understand what that really means, right? Like if you're committed, you're all in, like you got it, like and we're open and we're collaborative and we're willing to be honest and open, and then we're all in on consistently showing up, right? And making sure that we're getting the results over time and getting the compound interest from that. And then from that, and to answer your question, there's lots of ways to do it. So I wanted to probably get the framework to think about so you got the framework to think about and then make it individual for that particular mastermind. And obviously we've got recommendations as well, right? So the framework, I just call it the focus model, right? So the first thing is to find the right members, and then there's steps in that to validate and set of questions to say, how do I know I've got the right members? And then once I've got the right members, and it's a kind of dynamic process as well, although you can follow it, of course, sequentially, as it were, is to define what the purpose is and the goals, right? So why are we here overall? What does that look like? What are we trying to achieve? And then specifically what the goals for that period of time, for that year, for instance. And then once we've got like, find the right members, so the F and the O is outline the purpose and goals, and then the C is to create the structure. And then we go on to utilize tools and accountability, and then sustainably and how do we grow. But like part of that is the structure piece. Yeah, and our recommendation is depending on the size of the group. Like we've got a medium-sized group, say 4 to 7, 8 advisors. An hour every 2 weeks is a good cadence to think about. And I do like a kick-off version of it as well to define those things out. That's a bit longer. I definitely have had groups where they would prefer to meet 2 hours once a month, and then make a commitment every quarter to meet in person as well. I'm about one of my clients uh, connected me with someone who runs an insurance company that also runs a mastermind for his advisors. It's like this guy doesn't know how to run masterminds. Like he's got a great commitment to it, and like he's got you know capability, but he's never done it before, right? So like he's like, can you help him do this? So I spent the last couple of weeks pulling this together, and then we're about to go up to New York to do this thing next week or so, 2 weeks after, I should say. And so their version of it's a bit different, but the principles remain the same, right? So I wanted to make sure to pull that together. And as you go through that process, it will become clear as to what you need for your particular group, depending on how far they are along in their business journey, how many people it is as well. But we definitely have some specific recommendations because that's the stuff that people get uh, bogged down in, right? Like what is the detail of it? But like so having that process to follow, I think is really important. But ultimately, find the right set of people and really be clear for you what is it that you want. It will then the cadence and stuff will reveal itself, and my recommendations of how we do that become a bit clearer, like or what allow you to get to that point quicker, I should say, as well.
What are some of the And I'm sure every group is different, so we can just rattle off sort of a bunch of options
Yeah.
that folks can right size for themselves.
Mhm.
But what are some of the agenda items? Is it what's your tech stack? What's your marketing plan? Like what are you encouraging people to actually discuss so that people aren't hopping on the call being like,
Oh yeah,
so
it's
what do
the
you want
worst
to
one.
talk about?
Yeah, anything but that, right? I mean, to your point, like if you've got a group of people, you're just going to burn the time up, right? Because like it's a group of smart people, they can wing things. In fact, like the smarter the group is, and it's likely going to be a smart group of people, the more that they're going to wing things, and the more they can burn the time anyway, like and appear in a good way, but never get the result. And I like to start with the setup. The setup and the template is so important, right? To really understand what is it that we want to accomplish here, and then specifically invite everyone to just get really clear on what their business looks like. What are the real numbers? Let's just be open and clear and submit all that, put it all together so everyone can see where things are. And just by doing that process on the front end, that creates a lot of awareness. It creates a lot of ways of seeing things you didn't see before, and like, wow, like I thought that was just a problem for me, but oh, it's a problem for you as well. And like, oh, you do things that way. So that really starts like it's a great starting point to build out like what the agenda looks like on a month to month basis, right? So some some masterminds, the way I have it set up is that every once a month we'll go back to the numbers. Okay, so part of it will be setting the goals, what we're getting to right now at a high level, much higher level than it would be like on a one-on-one coaching situation, of course. But like, what are the numbers we're tracking together? What did you say that was most important? We might hit that once a month, and then might think about like those off weeks being okay. Look, we wanted to really understand about how your team's set up. So one of the participants takes it on to come back and present on a deep dive of how their team is set up, and then people will have actions that come back on the back of that as well, and kind of make sure that we've got that set up in front. So we kind of got that agenda laid out. And you could do that up to 12 months laid out. It could be every few months we adjust on it. But like knowing that up front is really important. We're not going to get into the actual mastermind because that's the golden time, right, Dave? Like that time that you've got together has to be all upside stuff. All the other stuff before it is the pre-work that needs to be figured out. And that's the connective tissue, right? To make sure that you can go in there and like lift the weights, right? You need to make sure that that stuff is done beforehand so they can execute on the agenda when they're in there.
So it seems like it's identifying some of the pain points or opportunities that the group is experiencing and having each meeting sort of be a bit of a theme maybe around some of those things. Like you said, like team structure, next could be, what are you doing from a marketing standpoint that's working or not working? Another one could be, what does your sales process look like, the cadence of meetings, your follow-up strategy? And then there's actions after each of those meetings of, okay, based on today, evaluate your current sales structure and take what you learned and apply it. And the expectation is that there's action taken after each of the calls to ensure progress and not just good conversation.
Absolutely. And the magic, of course, is that you fill in the gaps for what you need, right? Like, so if I think about one example, an advisor comes in and says, look, I really wanted to be in a mastermind with this guy because I saw that he had 7 million AUM in 1 year, and I just don't understand quite how he did that. And my practice is bigger than him. I don't know what was the methodology he did around that, right? I'm building at a steady pace, but like how did he hit that in 1 year? Like, was it an acquisition? If it was, how did he go through do that? What's the size of the team? Is it just a volume play? And so that tends to be like the starting point. Like, I want to know what this person did in that. Like, what is it about? And then we make sure that we're really clear what you want overall from that, and then build out the agenda and build out those pieces based on that as well. I think it's so important. And having a place to share the content is so important because you want to be able to come back to it. Like it's almost creating a repository of everything you would ever need to kind of build your business because there's just so much gold that comes out of those conversations. It's just making sure it's collated in the same way. Because the opposite, right? The One of the reasons why like I was so convicted with this because I had a client who, by the way, I didn't even know he was in a study group, not a mastermind, a study group. And for me, that's just like the old school term of it, right? I want to transform study groups to masterminds. Like study groups are fine and comfortable, but masterminds are transformational, right? And that's the
Mhm.
juice. And he said to me, "Oh yeah, like I meet with like my study group every quarter or so. When we meet for a couple of hours. Normally we coincide with some sort of event, and so like we play golf afterwards. That's nice. We meet for a couple of hours. There's always a couple of nuggets I take away. I write down. It's good. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Like nothing wrong with that at all. What we're missing is that huge opportunity, that connectivity before that, right? It's just a comfortable thing rather than really getting clear about what we're sharing and how we implementing that in our business.
Before I go over and transition towards some relationship stuff, um, how many people is too many to have in a mastermind?
Yeah, I think it's an art as much as it is as a science. I think once you're getting above 10, 12, it becomes challenging to manage. And then that affects like a sliding scale of stuff, right? And that might affect the way you set it up. If you're in a position where it's like, well, we actually meet once a month and it's for 3 hours, and we have like a lot of our team doing the back work and the coordination, and we're really tight on it. You might be able to get to that 12 number, something like that. And so if that's what they wanted to start with, it might be easier to do that. But I think once you get above like to that 8, 10 mark, you're losing some of the impact depending on how you set it up as well.
I mean, even just having a schedule, 12 people, that in and of itself
Right.
is a challenge
Absolutely.
just
Yeah,
logistically.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, let's walk through your belief, which I don't think is a belief. I think it's fact that advisors need to make sure that they're maintaining a relationship-centric approach to their business and their clients, even as technology advances. And I'm going to bring up a tech tool that we have that I think helps not replace the relationship building process, but rather helps augment the process. And I'll share it with you to get your thoughts on it, but help unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, awesome, man. This makes me jump up and down inside, like because the relationships and the depth that we have with our clients, really any industry, but certainly financial services because of the way it's often thought about. My favorite celebrations are when clients come to me and say, "Look, this week," I remember one sticks out right now. It's probably like 9 months ago or so. He jumped on Zoom and he was in his car. He said, "Sorry, I'm in my car, but I'm outside a client's house. I just came out." He said, she called me a couple of weeks ago to say, her husband had just passed away, and like he'd been understanding where it was along the way, and so it wasn't so surprising, but a sad moment, of course. And he was the third or fourth person that she called because of the depth of their relationship and what it means that they've helped each other over the years, and and giving her a lot of certainty and security in the time of her need. And of course, that comes with the financial picture, but it's the relationship that did it, right? And it's much more than just that security from a financial point of view. And so, like for me, that's just uh, an obvious way of how important it is. I was working with a group this morning, and an accelerator group I do with. We just kicked the latest one off with a small group this morning, and I wanted to share with these advisors like how important it is to think about the depth and impact that you have. Like it's not just the financial piece. It's not what you know technically. It's what you're building, and that's what's going to be most fulfilling as well. Ultimately, people want to be connected to other people. That's it. That's it. And technology, for me, is a way of accelerating that process, uh, not to remove that process in any way.
And I think it accelerates it, but also I think it helps from a system standpoint to ensure that things don't fall through the cracks. And what I mean by that is
Yes.
most advisors, if given a, a this or that question, would you rather have deep relationships with your clients or surface level relation? They're obviously going to choose the deeper relationships, but frankly, people just become busy and they have this, oh crap, I haven't talked to Nick in 5 months, right? And a lot of things, fall through the cracks. So we've developed a tool. It's an AI tool, which for a while I was very resistant to AI because I'm pro-human. However, it's not
That's
going
funny.
anywhere, and I'm not turning into a dinosaur. And I want to utilize it for my own business, but also I want to figure out a way to develop tools for advisors to help augment the things that they want to do. And one of the things they want to do is build relationships and deepen those relationships
Hmm.
with their clients. So essentially, we have a tool that plugs into an advisor's CRM, it plugs into their note taker, and it plugs into their email. And what happens is think about in conversations, like in our first conversation, I know that you're a girl dad, right? As an example, you know that my wife is pregnant and she's due later, later this summer, early fall, September 1st to be exact. You pick up things through conversations where it's like, hey, it would be really nice if when I was talking to people about, my wife being pregnant, if around the end of August, I got a note from them like, hey, hope everything's going well with your wife and that the pregnancy and ultimately the birth, goes smoothly. But what ends up happening is I connect with folks, say in October, and they're like, "Hey, how's the baby? Did everything go great?" And that's awesome, right? But there's ways in which you can be proactive about that. So as long as you're having conversations with your clients beyond financial planning, then this tool works because what it does is it learns everything about your clients that's in your CRM, your note taker, and your email for email correspondence. And they get an email every single week that basically says, hey, Nick, here are 12 clients you should reach out to, and here's why. So and so's daughter is graduating college this week because it learned it from the notes. Oh, and by the way, here's an email template that you can either click send or you can use as inspiration, edit, or just pick up the phone, whatever your method of communication is. However, this serves as your reminder essentially. Or, hey, Nick is, wrapping up a home renovation around this time. Reach out to him and ask how it's going. So and so's favorite sports team just won the Super Bowl. Go and reach out to Nick and congratulate him and see if he had a chance to watch the game. So it helps prompt you on a weekly basis of all the clients that you should reach out to, why you should reach out to them, and even goes as far as to put together an email draft in your tone of voice that you can use to just click send or use as inspiration. So we've developed it because advisors want to develop relationships. But when I say, hey, advance a couple relationships every single day, they're like, okay, but like, what do I do? It's like, boom, here's an email that you get prompted with every week of exactly what to do. So we don't have to have this conversation anymore. Just do the thing. So that's one thing that we've developed to not replace the relationship building process, but to prompt and augment to hold advisors accountable and to give them a system to abide by, to be intentional about advancing those relationships.
That's awesome, man. I gotta address what you said a couple of times, right? Let's be clear, it's augmentation. I had a friend of mine, I was talking to him about ChatGPT, and he's like, "Oh, I don't like that. I want to think for myself." I was like, oh, come on. So I explained to him that what it does is just takes away the first few layers of thought, so that we can put the human on the stuff, the creativity part, which is it allows us to get to that point quicker, right? So it's the same thing. It's like it's taking the system, it's taking the prompt, such that you can put that relationship currency in an easier way and more systematic way. I think it's so important. I will invite my advisors, I coach them to having the right system to follow up, right? Every time they're on with their client, they make sure that they follow up with the booking the next call, right? It's a way of building trust. And that call rotation will change depending on how that client relationship is and what the client wants and what you want. But having the linkage between each conversation is a way of building currency through that. And I think being able to add those extra pieces in and be prompted by the things that have already been said, because it is augmentation, because it's not making anything up, right? It's like it's the real thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and when you have I heard this yesterday from my business partner. I was like, I think that's spot on. When you have a really good relationship with your clients, I believe, based on what he shared, I believe it to be true, that there's almost a layer of guilt if they ever thought about leaving, meaning you could have made a
Yeah.
mistake,
Yeah.
but they're more likely to give you grace and an opportunity to fix it than to just up and leave compared to if they did not have a good relationship with you
Yeah.
because of guilt. So if you're doing a good job building a great relationship, not that you should be messing up all the time anyways, but it's still a business run by humans. There will be mistakes at some point. They're going to give you the grace because you've given them the thought and the intent in deepening the relationship beyond just finances.
It- right. And it may be that's the emotion that might be felt in that place, but I perhaps like to think of it as though along the way, because you're creating that humanity and that connection, it's a real relationship. For me, it likens towards, some people say you should have a personal relationship which is separate to your business relationships. Like for me, you absolutely can. I I consider my clients my friends,
Hmm.
and some are longer friends than others, some are deeper friends than others, but I approach it the same way. I take myself wherever I go. I just want to be the same person wherever. If I put my coaching hat on, that's what I'm doing in that moment, right? If I put my father hat on, that's what I'm doing in the moment. But I want to take myself wherever I go. And I think we're constantly thinking about how do I enjoy time with this person, right? I'm only going to get fulfillment if someone else is fulfilled, right? That's how that works. You give something and you feel fulfilled about it, right? The old saying goes, the more that you give, you never have to worry about anything in your life. I think that's the Zig Ziglar quote that I just butchered, but that's the concept, right? It's the same thing. Like they will feel the guilt, right? Because that you mean something to them. You're like, oh man, like how can I help him fix this, right? And if you do that together, you will both absolutely get a better result, and perhaps more importantly, have a better experience towards that result.
Couldn't agree more. One of the things, Nick, that we ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them, and it's our way of um, distilling a reading list for our listeners. And the book that you chose, which I've read, it's a great book, is
Mm.
10x is easier than 2x, and talk about coming full circle because this is exactly what we alluded to with your goal of helping 100,000 advisors. So I wonder where that came from. But talk to us about the impact that that book has had on you.
Yeah, it's funny how things come full circle, isn't it? And it's also funny how, there's only so many concepts and principles, the methods are many, and the deeper we get into do what we're doing, the more you realize it's the same thing over and over. But that's all we need, right? That's all we need. It's the same thing, the same concepts over and over. So that's a great book for sure, because the concept of 10x is easier than 2x is to say that oftentimes it's to iterate forward like to 2x, you're buried in the same thing, same level of thinking. If you're thinking about, well, what if this was 10x more than it? And I like if you've got $1 million business, it's like, well, okay, what would I do if it was a $10 million business rather than trying to get it to 1.5 million? Like it allows you different ways of thinking, different ways of getting out your own head, and also like almost act like a different person. It's a really powerful way to come back and think about that. And it's a very well written book. In fact, the three books in that series I recommend really to everyone because 10x and 2x, Who Not How, and The Gap and the Gain, and a lot of powerful books. And there's tons of other books that reflect some of the principles, and it's very interesting to me because I would suggest that a great book is a great book, and I love to. And what I mean by that is that you, you go and read it at a certain point. You mentioned Think and Grow Rich earlier. I haven't read that for a long time. I bet if I read that now, I would read as though, I mean, I would remember certain parts of it, but it would read as though it was a brand new book because the concepts are absolutely timeless. It's the person that grows and sees a slight difference in it. So I definitely would recommend that should be on everyone's reading list.
Well, Nick, this has been a pleasure. I think you and I are very aligned philosophically in the way that we coach and lead others and build relationships. So this has been fun, and I appreciate you joining today. With that said, if someone's interested in connecting with you, learning more about how to potentially work with you, where should they go?
They should go just simply to my website, figureadvisor.com, 7-figureadvisor.com, and you can find some more stuff out there as well. Yep, and I pretty appreciate being here. It was cool to get into it a little bit today. And look, it's iron sharpens iron for sure. And then we talked about standards earlier, and so I really appreciate your representation of how you think about things, and like you've definitely helped me take it to another level today. So I appreciate that.
Love it. Well, Nick, appreciate your time. And for everyone tuning in, appreciate your time and attention. As always, this show wouldn't be a show if it wasn't for you guys tuning in, sharing it. So we appreciate you, and we'll catch you on the next episode. And Nick, thanks again for joining.